Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Sober Bartender podcast, the show where we recover from life. So, this is the final episode of our first ever Sober Summer series. And, summer is a time where we slow down. We kind of are a little more focused on play and a little less on structure and a little less on routine and just a little more on enjoying life, I feel. And, September is right around the corner. And with it, there's back to school. In certain places, the temperature starts coming down. I think down here in South Texas, that won't be for another couple months. But today I want to talk about my take on the difference between sobriety and recovery. So sobriety is just not drinking or not using or not participating in harmful behaviors. Whereas recovery is a whole different ballgame. Recovery is where we're recovering the part of ourselves that we lost when we were surviving in our addiction or in our struggle and in our suffering. Recovery is undoing all of that damage inside of ourselves first and then out in the world. When I initially stopped drinking in 2019, I initially went to an inpatient detox, and then I went to an intensive outpatient program. I wasn't participating in any recovery, and I felt like people should just be happy that I wasn't drinking anymore. And people around me told me, you don't need to change anything about yourself. You're great the way that you are. You just drink too much. And so I kind of believed that or wanted to believe that, but I couldn't live my life the way that it was, like without alcohol. So then I take alcohol out. So alcohol was only a symptom of what was going on inside of me. I didn't know this until I entered recovery, but looking back, I can see I took out the alcohol, I took away my solution, and then all these other problems that I didn't have before started coming up. I no longer felt comfortable inside my home. I, was engaged to someone at that time, and I no longer could function in that relationship. I couldn't stand it. And this was, a fairly healthy relationship, but I wasn't a healthy person and I wasn't a healthy partner. So I started engaging in other behaviors that kind of gave me a similar feeling to my drinking. So my life was still spiraling, even though the alcohol was gone, because I wasn't willing to change anything about myself. And the changes that I was making were really superficial and external. And I still felt like everybody else was the problem. This person's lazy. I just can't stand them. This person is still engaging in that behavior. I can't stand them. I couldn't stand going to work and seeing other people drink and have fun and not ruin their life. And it took going and entering recovery. And then initially I took the 12 steps, but I saw it as like a box that needed to be checked. It wasn't something to where I wanted like a profound change in myself and my life. It was just, that's what they said to do. Get a home group, get a sponsor, take the steps. And I did that. And I managed to stay sober for 11 months. And I even managed to start to enjoy myself after a period of time. But once I stepped away from that and people weren't telling me what to do anymore, and I wasn't interested in listening to what I should do, the thought of drinking again definitely came right around, and recovery sounded less appealing and more like a chore, and sobriety sounded less appealing and more like instead of like a lifelong journey that I was partaking in, it seemed more like something that I did and realized wasn't for me, and I just wanted to go back to everything that I had missed out on. I needed to make up for lost time. And so, as those of you that have listened to my story in episode 1 of this podcast know, but for those of you that are new here, I decided to drink again after I was like 10 days before my first sober birthday. And I did not do this in the town where I lived. I was living in Las Vegas. No, I was, communicating with an ex-boyfriend, went up to Washington State from Vegas and decided, oh, this is beautiful. I need to move here. And went back to Vegas, packed up my life during COVID and moved up there, and then drank the day that I got there. Like it was all so chaotic, and I had removed my entire support structure and any semblance of, recovery or the life that I was trying to live. Totally threw that out the window, and then was just left with myself, with this new relationship, with these new surroundings, and it's still COVID, and the dogs don't get along, and just I made life harder for myself. And that's been a theme in my life. So it's, once again, it's not just the alcohol, it's the thinking, and it's the acting out, and it's the seeking, like the adrenaline, and seeking the change outside of myself, because I stopped doing any kind of work inside. I wanted everything from the outside. And in my experience, change does not happen from the outside in. It is an inside job. We change inside, and then that comes out into our outsides, and then our outsides sometimes no longer fit, and then we slowly can make some changes that fit more with who we actually are inside. But it's important to not just make these big, profound changes and then be stuck with consequences, and then not have our coping mechanisms or our tools at hand, because then we turn back to what we know and what we trust. And it is a misery, but it's a comfortable misery, because we prefer to be comfortable. We prefer to go to what we know, as opposed to be in the unknown and be uncomfortable. And that doesn't leave us any room for growth, except through pain and experiences. And that was my big experience then, was I had sobriety, but I didn't really have recovery, because my heart wasn't in it, but my mind was in it, because I liked the validation that I got, and I liked the attention that I got, and it did help. But it took about 5 months for me to get extremely uncomfortable. And the second time around, I did not have to go back to detox, but I did have to stop drinking, because my life around me was just, it completely fell apart again. And I couldn't stand to live in my own skin. And I thought about ending my life, and I occasionally in a blackout talked about it. And I didn't ever act on it. I did not ever have any attempts. It was just, I was screaming for help on the inside. And the fact that I put myself in that really uncomfortable situation saved my life, because I don't know if I would have been so desperate to change. I wouldn't have been so desperate for a solution. And yeah, getting to that point of desperation was the greatest gift of my life. So there I am, back in recovery, just feeling new, but also feeling like I know everything. But I'm sitting here today, and I haven't had a drink or a drug, in I think it's 991 days today or something like that. I only looked because it's almost 1,000 and I want to celebrate. But yes, so now that I have recovery in my life and I see the benefits of recovery, I see the difference between just being sober and having recovered myself. So taking action to heal and to identify and unpack and unbecome all of these things. Initially I did it through 12-step recovery, and today I continue to do it through recovery dharma, to where I go through and I do inquiry, where we ask the questions of like, what happened, and like, how did I show up, and how could I show up differently now, and like, what have I learned, and what are my tools? And it's all here, and it's all happening, and it's all just this beautifully laid out plan. But if we just think that we know better, and we just think that the substance is the problem, and that the problem isn't that we drank, it's why we drank the way that we drank, I think that's the difference. Because alcohol can sit on a shelf, like I'm at work, there's alcohol all around me, and it does not do a thing to me. It's not out to get me. It's not evil or, powerful. It has no power over me. But if I drink it, it could be a different story. Fortunately, I'm not in a position to want to test that. But alcohol itself, it's in tons of products. It's, the hand sanitizer that we use. And that doesn't have this magical effect to where we morph into that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, right? It's just a substance. But it's our thoughts about it. And when we put it into our body, that the change happens, that the difference is there. So, I voiced that, and it's been received kind of controversial. There are some old timers in meetings that would say, well, I lived in a house and we couldn't have any kind of rubbing alcohol, any mouthwash, any this, any that. I'm glad that worked for you. That was not my experience. I didn't try to drink perfume. I didn't try to drink mouthwash. It was just, those things were there, but it was my thoughts about the alcohol, because when I had a feeling or thought that I felt I should not have, or I could not handle, I wanted to put something into my body to change how I think and feel. And that is the theme. Like, something feels good, I want it to feel better. Something, I feel a little anxious about going into a situation, I want to lighten the load. I want to, be light on my feet. Well, I ended up pretty heavy on my feet, and I kind of had to drag my body around for a long time. So you take the power out of the substance, and you see that it's in here. Like, it's in us, it's in our thinking, and it's in our how we operate, and it's in like the unhealed things in us, and in the suffering that we've, either knowingly or unknowingly just continue to perpetuate. And recovery gives you a chance to kind of take that out and like look at it and question it, and then just sit with it and hold it. And then, you can put it back in and just love it. And that's a big thing. Like, I'm not feeling my best right now. My energy hasn't been up. Been focused on moving more, on nurturing my body more. Some days I kick butt at it, and some days I struggle. But that's irrelevant, because I'm human. I'm not competing for something. I'm not going to base my worth in my ability to stick to, a discipline per se. There are disciplines that I do stick to because I get immense benefit out of them, like meditation and journaling, and just this last, I don't know how long, I guess since we got back from Washington, I just feel heavy. I don't feel very love and light. I feel like I've been judging myself for negative thoughts and not being able to practice what I preach, not being able to have equanimity, and that wonderful it is what it is, and that's okay sentiment in situations. I've felt offended and I've felt wronged, and I felt like a victim, and I've also felt like a villain for my thoughts about situations that have come up. And then I've gotten really upset at myself for feeling those things because I shouldn't, because I should be better than that. And then I've got to sit back and laugh at myself because who do I think I am? I am not perfect. I am a perfectly imperfect. I'm a spiritual being having a human experience, and it's okay to not be. I'm not perfect. I'm human. I have negative thoughts. I have negative thoughts about myself. I have negative thoughts about other people. The difference now is that I don't let those thoughts run the show. I have to step back, take it out, and analyze it and look at it and question why it's there. And something I still do is I do look for my part in it. You know, where am I contributing to my suffering in this thought that I'm carrying around? You know, I mean, is my thought about this true? Is there a different way of looking at it? How would I feel without that thought? And then turn around and look at what my part is and how I can show up differently. Because once again, that's the part that I can control. But then I take that thing and I can just set it down. Or if I choose to keep it, then I can put that back into my heart, and then I can love it and be patient with it and be tolerant and not need it to be something different. I can just let it be. Like the fact that there are things that are out of my control, things that are big and important, like my mom being sick, or things, you know, going on with my family and how things go, those things being out of my control are really hard. And it's like, oh, if you can't do anything about it, you should put it out of your mind. And it's like, that's impossible. Like I cannot not think about these things. But I can definitely give them to God. I can definitely hand those things over and just trust. I have to trust, because where I started, where the way I lived and where I started was completely dark and different than where I sit right now. And so if I can be where I'm at right now, then I have to trust that these other situations that are out of my control, there's a way bigger plan for them. You know, we feel like illness and we feel like death is such a personal thing because we're so personally affected by it. And we forget that those are unfortunate parts of our life experience. It's not a punishment. It's not, I don't think it's even a test or a lesson. It's just part of it. But every single painful experience is an opportunity to show up for ourselves and for the people that we love differently. And we're not always going to get it right. But thanks to recovery, I don't have a great big tornado of a life swirling around me. So when things do come up like they are right now, I'm able to just sit and be present with them. I'm able to recognize, okay, it's time for me to reach out to some outside help. It's time, it's time for me to, get some support in this. It's time for me to, put my oxygen mask on, hold, set and hold some healthy boundaries. And it's time, it's time for me to like double down on my recovery and on my tools in my toolkit, make sure I'm doing that meditation and that journaling and recognizing when I have intrusive thoughts. I try not to participate in thought stopping or thought limiting behavior anymore. I try not to just not think about it. But I do try to spin things. I do try to ask myself if there is another way to look at things. I question my thoughts, and I recognize and notice when I'm judging my own thoughts. And then I try to just step back and go, we're thinking that now. Okay. And that's kind of where I'm at. So that was a whole roundabout story of the difference between sobriety and recovery. When I was just sober, there was still so much chaos, both internally and externally. And I was just not drinking. It was like I was still obsessing about not drinking. I was still just focused on, instead of focused on when I was going to drink, I was focused on how I needed to not drink. And then recovery gave me something to focus on. It gave me work to do, and it was beneficial work to me, and it helped other people around me by me showing up. And I mean, it's amazing. Like, recovery is amazing. The things that can happen in your life if you do the work and just get the hell out of your own way. Just get out of your way. Stop doing things to make your own life more difficult. Like getting into recovery and just focusing on like pouring yourself into this work and letting it work on you. Then you're focused less on attention seeking, and you're focused less on people's opinions of you, and you're more concerned with how they feel about themselves and how you can help lift them up. And I just feel like all the doors open back up the longer I stay in the work. Doors inside myself that I did not know were there. It's like an onion for sure. Like, just keep peeling because there's just more in there. So if you're in a spot where you think that you just need to drink less, that could very well be possible. If you know that you need to not drink and you're just fighting that, I strongly encourage you to start looking at recovery. And you do not have to be sober to start recovery. But if you feel so inclined, then that gives you something to focus on, like to shift your focus from, the drinking to what in the hell am I supposed to do now? Because you just take the thing away, but you don't put anything in its place. And if you drink like I drank, alcohol plays such a huge part in your life. Like, it was my best friend. Like, I was never alone because I had a drink. And then when you take that thing away, but you don't put something healthy in its place, you end up with a great big void. And then you try to fill it with all kinds of other things, like different behaviors and people pleasing, and just still trying to escape the way you think and feel, but without any healthy tools. So there are so many different kinds of recovery. There's, the traditional 12-step. Like I said, I'm a huge fan of Recovery Dharma. changing my whole world right now. There's smart recovery, there's celebrate recovery. I mean, just get on your phone, get on your computer and look into it and see what you think might work for you. There's different apps that help you just limit the days that you drink. If you don't feel like it's controlling your life and it's a life or death thing, there are options for that too. There's, I think, like a Sunny Side app or something like that, where they just help you drink less days a month. That would not work for me, because once I start, I do not want to stop. There are books and there are podcasts and there are people who just want to reach out and touch you and pass on this beautiful gift that living this life gets to be. But you have to want it. There are a lot of people that stop drinking because they know that they should, or because their life is out of control, but they don't want to get better. They want to stay stuck in their problems. They want to stay a part of the party. They don't want to change. They're afraid, or, they're just not ready. But hey, it's a totally individual journey. It's your own. Mine is my own. I share it with you, but I try to be as transparent as possible, but there's still stuff I'm not ready to talk about. There's still stuff that I don't feel is appropriate for broadcasting to anyone that will listen. And maybe someday I will be able to shine a light on those dark places, but my journey is my own and I still walk it every day, but I can live as myself today, and I can love that me that was sober without recovery, that just continued to make a big old mess of life. And I can love the me, that was just shaking every morning and would puke when she brushed her teeth, and then follow that up with another shot so that way she didn't shake between home and work, and then drink as soon as she got to work. I still love her. And she couldn't do better until she knew better. And she is me. And now that I know better, I do better. And now that I know how, I try to share how. So if you are ever interested in the how, please feel free to reach out. You can send an anonymous message. You can send, you can message me on Facebook, Brandy Kelly. We have a Facebook group for this podcast called the Sober Bartender. You can find me on Instagram at the Sober Bartender Podcast, and on YouTube at the Sober Bartender. And for anyone out there that is struggling today, I just want you to know that I love you so much, and you are going to get through this, and it does get better. And I love you so much, and you absolutely matter. Don't give up. I put out new episodes every Wednesday at 5 a.m. Central. So please follow, subscribe, like, rate, review, and share if there's anyone that you feel would benefit from this message. If you like what you hear, please feel free to share it. It helps carry the message, and it helps us get seen by the algorithm. So I think that's it for today and the end of our Sober Summer series. Thank you for joining me, and I will talk to you next week.